Is that a hair? Can't have that. I grew up in the South, and now that I live up here in the North, really good, soulful Southern comfort food is kind of hard to come by. So I learned how to make it myself. And one of the best friends I may ever have in this lifetime is a huge fan of my red beans and rice. So I'm partially making this so that he can have my not so secret red beans and rice recipe. But I'm also kind of making it because, who am I kidding? I don't need an excuse to make red beans and rice. It's kind of one of my favorite things ever. All right, so to celebrate the French cultural history of New Orleans, I don't know if you're supposed to say that New Orleans or New Orleans. Anyway, I say New Orleans, so we're gonna go with that. I'm gonna call this La Joie de Vivre red beans and rice. La Joie de Vivre means the joy of living, and to me, this recipe, this red beans and rice, is a celebration of life because I love eating it and I love cooking it. So I think it's a very apt title. Anyway, we're gonna need a big pot, or in my case, a small pot, because I'm only cooking for one. We're going to start with andouille sausage. Andouille is a spicy Cajun sausage. It's usually not too spicy, but it does have like paprika and garlic, and it's kind of the quintessential Cajun sausage. And then some kind of smoked ham. Different recipes use different kinds of smoked ham, but some kind of smoked ham is sort of standard. But to start it all off, we're just going to take a big dollop of bacon fat, throw that in the pot, then throw in the meats. Once the meat has had a little bit of time to crisp up, then it's time for our vegetables. Now you'd think French, New Orleans, you'd go with a mirepoix, but that is not correct. I'm using what's commonly referred to as the Holy Trinity, which does include celery, does include onion, but does not include carrot. Instead, it has green bell pepper. And I know green bell pepper kind of gets a bad rap sometimes, but it's basically just gonna melt down into the sauce of the dish. So you're not going to see like big chunks of celery or big chunks of green bell pepper. It's going to cook for long enough to where this stuff is just going to melt down and become the sauce. To help the vegetables soften and cook down, we're going to salt and pepper this. Then we're going to add a few spices. We want to add them early so that they get a chance to kind of toast on the bottom of the pan. So before we do any of the liquids, we want to put in our spices. I'm just using paprika and thyme and bay leaves. You don't want to skip the bay leaves. That's one of those essential flavors in Creole cooking that if you skip it, it really just isn't the same. Then we need a few more essential flavors. We need garlic, and I use jalapeno. Jalapeno is not a standard ingredient, but I like mine a little bit spicy, and I like the bright freshness of a jalapeno pepper. We're gonna mince the garlic and the jalapeno really finely. A lot of people will opt for like a Cajun seasoning mix. A Cajun seasoning mix is really just onion and garlic and salt and pepper and paprika and thyme. So if you're already putting fresh garlic and fresh onion and you're putting salt and pepper in it already, then you don't really need a Creole seasoning. You just need the thyme and the paprika and the bay leaves. So once the spices are in there, they're gonna kind of cake onto the vegetables and the meats, and then they might start to crisp up and toast up on the bottom of the pan. So we'll need to deglaze this with wine. I mean, we could deglaze it with water, but why use water when you can use wine? But we still need to add broth. I'm going to use chicken broth. You can use any kind of broth you have. If you want to do like a vegetable broth, go for it. I have bouillon, so I'm just going to dissolve the bouillon in a little bit of water. I'm using canned beans because canned beans really only need a couple hours to start to break down and thicken up and be exactly how you want it to be for red beans and rice. So I'm starting with canned beans, but I'm going to be sure to rinse them. Canned beans have a tendency to be pretty salty, and you don't really want to throw this gooey bean, salty water in your red beans and rice. So definitely rinse them off. Once the beans are rinsed, they can just go in the pot with everything else. Last little bit of flavor that we're going to toss in here after we've got the beans in there is a little bit of hot sauce. You probably could just throw in a little bit of apple cider vinegar if you're sensitive to spice, but I think a vinegar-based hot sauce is the way to go. Any vinegar-based hot sauce would work. We just need a dab of it. It's going to give that tangy, vinegary, acid brightness to it. This is just going to sit and simmer for at least an hour. 2 hours is probably a more appropriate time. Then it's time to cook our rice. I rinse my rice because I've had some bad rice episodes before where it gets really glunky and cloppy and cakes together into a chunk, and I don't want any of that happening today. So I'm going to rinse my rice. just cook that according to the instructions on your rice package. Or if you have a rice cooker, do that, because that's easier. Then the only thing we have left to do is just handle some garnishes to make it look really nice and add a little bit of fresh green on top. I'm gonna opt for fresh parsley and green onion. Once the beans have cooked down and it's at the consistency we want, all we need to do is spoon that into a bowl, throw a dollop of our fresh cooked white rice on top, sprinkle it with our garnishes, then it's time to enjoy. Enjoy one of the joys of life, la joie de vivre. So in preparation for this video, I found out that red beans and rice was traditionally eaten on Mondays, and that was the day that all the women would get together and do laundry. And red beans and rice was one of those things that you could just throw everything in the pot and forget about it for hours. The key to amazing Southern food, 9 times out of 10, is pork fat. And this recipe has 3 different kinds. So we got andouille sausage, smoked ham, bacon fat. I would use a smoked ham hock, but that's kind of a lot for a small amount, and I'm only cooking for 1, and I don't really want a big giant pot of red beans and rice. But if you're making a big giant pot of red beans and rice, you better get smoked ham hocks, because that's the thing, that's the jam. I just have regular old smoked ham, and every time I make bacon, I always drain off the fat into a jar and collect it for exactly this purpose. You can really never have too much bacon fat in your fridge, and it lasts forever. Maybe not forever, but it doesn't really go bad. As far as beans, I have a hard time going to the grocery store and choosing not to buy the can that says red beans and opting for the kidney beans, because I feel like it's red beans and rice, so use red beans, right? Just doesn't seem logical. Traditionally, dry red kidney beans is what like the standard red beans and rice is made out of. But I like red beans. They're a little bit smaller and they're more like the shape of a jelly bean, and I dig that. What else? What else do I need to talk about? Rice is just rice. I use parboiled rice. That's just what I have, and that's what I like using. I would not use jasmine rice, just as an aside, because that is like Asian food and it gets sticky. We don't really want a sticky rice for this. Unless you do. You can use a sticky rice if you like sticky rice. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about it. I think I'm just gonna cook it now. To the cutting board. before I cut the green onions, I'm gonna just say this, because I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. Green onion curls is a thing I just learned from watching a video of Melissa Miranda, who is the chef and owner of Musong Restaurant in Seattle. And it's kind of my new favorite way of cutting green onions. So that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna show you how it's done. This has been cooking for about 2 hours now, maybe a little bit more than 2 hours. It's the perfect consistency. Watch out for these bay leaves. Take these out now. We don't need them in there anymore. We've got parsley, the bias cut green onion, and the green onion curls that have been sitting in ice water. I'm gonna put the beans and all the sausage and everything on the bottom, and then I'm just gonna put a dollop of the rice on top. Oh, that looks so good. Green onion curls. Here, let's find a really good one. Check that out. Let's give you a close-up. I absolutely can't wait to eat this. The anticipation is killing me. It's perfect. It's perfect. Okay, first bite. A little bit of parsley. This is seriously good. I got a piece of salty ham. Hot sauce. Just a little bit of hot sauce on top for that zing. I can safely say, without a doubt, this is one of the best batches of red beans or rice I've ever made. I wouldn't do anything different.